But I've kind of made peace with the questions that I had in the summertime, not just off the combine and the testing either, but just kind of understanding from a scouting perspective. He's not a scheme transcendent talent, and I don't think that has to be a bad thing. All right, guys, let's talk about Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, Ohio State. A lot of different opinions on him. Our opinions of him have evolved throughout the course of this process. I think that's a credit to Garrett and what he did at the NFL Combine, too, kind of answering some of the questions about the long field speed that he does and does not have. But this is a player who has been a very productive receiver at Ohio State. And you think about the lineage of recent receivers to have come through Ohio State, Garrett Wilson's in good company with the Terry McLaurins of the world, right? I mean, they have consistently put out high-level wide receiver prospects. Garrett Wilson and his teammate Chris Olave, no exception. Joe, I'd like you to reflect on your original perception of Garrett Wilson, which came from me. I'll be completely honest, and I love that you're up here for this one because we do draft dudes every day. So we talk about we talk about all these guys and do podcasts before we actually do the podcast. But Garrett Wilson is a player who you had a certain expectation for based off of me and my regional watches and the presentation of the team, but also a lot of back channel conversations because we're BSing about players. Yeah. And then the player you got when you actually did the deep dive for yourself.
Well, I think the concerns that you had with Garrett Wilson were validated when you watched the tape, and that this isn't a player that addresses contact as a route runner very well. That's kind of the thing where you get hung up on him, kind of like he gets hung up on contact a little bit. So that's something to be mindful of. But you know, you do appreciate so much about the player. The route running is really good. The hands are really good. The game slows down for him at the catch point, and he's very good after the catch. And so while you may have to get a little bit creative with how you align him to make sure that he can have advantageous release opportunities to get into his routes, I think once that happens, I mean, this guy really has an exciting skill set that, you know, the NFL is looking for right now. And so, you know, not the biggest, but he certainly answered questions about the explosiveness and just kind of working on that release package and figuring out better ways to beat contact as a route runner is key for him.
Yeah, I think Garrett had to answer the question is he a slot-only guy, right? Just because of his size. And I think the 40 did a lot of that for him, just as far as people knowing that he can stretch defenses vertically consistently. And I think that was a big thing for him. And that's part of the rise in why people are now saying he may be wide receiver one, even though his teammate Chris Olave is right there. And I think that's because it's an argument to say that Garrett Wilson's film may be better. Like if he checks the box with the speed, I think Garrett Wilson's ability, once he has the ball in his hands, his run after catch ability is really good. Like you see the explosiveness, you see the shiftiness, you see how elusive he is in the open field. So I think you are getting a complete wide receiver, and of course it's about what you do, right, with the wide receivers. But we see nowadays with offenses, they do so many different things and put wide receivers in advantageous positions that you feel really comfortable with Garrett Wilson's skill set.
Yeah, I mean, Keith, you mentioned him after the combine. You know, he might be wide receiver one. Well, I think I have him as wide receiver one, and it's because a lot of the things you guys were mentioning in terms of this kid's ability with the ball in his hands is special. You know, his ability to make defenders miss both, even at the line of scrimmage. I think he does have some good releases, and yes, he does lack mass, and bigger, longer corners will give him problems. But that's most of these small receivers that we've seen today win. I mean, Justin Jefferson coming out of LSU, he got hung up on the line of scrimmage. You know, CeeDee Lamb, he got hung up on the line of scrimmage, and that's actually my comp is CeeDee Lamb. Just in terms of the way Garrett Wilson wins. Down the field, his body control to kind of adjust to the football, I think is special. I think it's very, very rare, some of the things he can do in terms of playing the ball in the air. His hands are excellent. His overall route running ability, the way he sets up defenders, he uses leverage, just a very flexible and smooth and sudden athlete at the top of the route, creates a ton of separation. And then the confidence and swagger that this kid plays with is eerily reminiscent to CD, where ball's in the air, it's his ball, and then I'm going to make you miss and take it into the house. And you know, my only pause for Wilson pre-combine was that vertical speed. And that being said, you saw him win down the field. It's not like we never saw that on tape. Now, we didn't see it, the clip that we saw Chris Olave win, which I think is a lot of the reasons why that they're compared to each other because they're teammates, but they're different kind of players. Then all of a sudden at the combine, Wilson's faster than Olave, which I don't think none of us would say he plays faster than Olave, but the time's the time, and he ran a 4.38. So I just think this kid has very, very few holes. The production's there, the athleticism's there, the mindset and toughness are there. I just have a hard time seeing this kid fail in the NFL.
So when you talk about, and I love, Garrett Wilson, everyone made great points. When you talk about his inability to handle physicality in the stem, I think about what Sean McVay does with Cooper Kupp. And he creates natural separation before the snap. Keeps him off the line of scrimmage. He puts him in those bunch sets and has him release last when the rest of the guys are switch releasing. And he kind of has a walk release up on the toes of the DBs. And if you start using Garrett Wilson in that regard with his suddenness in and out of his breaks and his footwork, he has really good feet in the contact window. And he knows how to work angles when he does win in press to put stress on guys to, hey, I'm going to release outside, then I'm going to work and shift really hard back cross face on an out-breaking route and lose you. He's a talented kid. So, again, if those are the concerns, you just got to, find a way to move him around and get him away from those physical press cover corners.
Yeah, I reflect on my own kind of journey with Garrett and obviously scouting the Big Ten in the summer is part of the process for what we do. You hear the hype on a guy like this, right? And you see some people have him ranked as wide receiver 1, and then you get into the tape in the summertime, and it's like, okay, well, I'm seeing a lot of work from the slot, some concerns about when he's facing press coverage on the outside. I don't think we necessarily consistently saw him stack on the outside and vertically down the field because in those situations, he wasn't winning early in the rep to be able to stack guys cleanly. And then that introduces the question of, okay, what's his actual speed? What's his functional speed? So there's little contextual things throughout the course of how he was used at Ohio State, what his current strengths are, that I think I had this certain perception of him as a player, and then you get in and you watch. But ultimately, I go back to the euphemism in scouting that it's only a problem if it's a problem, right? And I think about Garrett Wilson, and I think about playing receiver at the NFL level, and if you're going to draft him to be your X, and you're going to put him on the outside, and you're going to tell him to face everybody's number one corner who's got 32-inch arms and is super physical and beat press coverage on a down-by-down basis, he's probably going to struggle early in his career, and perhaps he continues to develop and build out his skill set, which I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to do that to fulfill and become a more well-rounded wide receiver. But, Damien, I agree with you. You put him in an offensive system that understands the value of stacked alignments and bunch sets and motion at the snap. And you do those things with him, and you don't ask him to be Chris Olave. You ask him to be Garrett Wilson, right? And I think that's the fun foil of those two guys is I don't want Garrett Wilson going to a vertical offense that would ask him to run the routes that Chris Olave ran at Ohio State, right? The posts, the goes. I want him running stuff across the middle. I want him running stuff that has double moves because he does set it up, right? I want offenses that have a lot of motion to get him kind of condensing into, and then he can run away from natural leverage, create that separation. How many times do we see Garrett Wilson on a shallow crosser across the middle and he turns it into a 60-yard gain? Yeah. Right? So it's the environment that Garrett Wilson goes into it that I think is going to be really critical for what he becomes early on. But I've kind of made peace with the questions that I had in the summertime, not just off the combine and the testing either, but just kind of understanding from a scouting perspective, he's not a scheme transcendent talent, and I don't think that has to be a bad thing.
Right.
It means you just have to be responsible with understanding who this player is. And if you ask him to do that, you're going to get all the returns you got at Ohio State, which is a super physical guy. It's ironic, right? As much as we didn't like how he dealt with contact on the stem, he deals with contact with the ball in his hands, and it's a totally different. He's a totally different dude.
Yeah.
So Garrett Wilson, he's an exciting prospect. He's been one that we were a little slow to come into, but it's not on being first. It's about being right, and we have this entire process to get there. And I think we're at a good spot with Garrett Wilson.